This one's for the disruptors, the uncommon, the unconventional, the rebels. You're not here to take things lying down. Well, season 2 is about shaking things up. I'm Beatrice, and this is the Art of Branding podcast. Be ready, be badass. Let's shake some shit up. And we're back with Michael, one of the 2 co-hosts for season 2 of the Art of Branding podcast for today's episode. Michael brings 2 decades of business experience, accelerating profits, giving business owners their time back. Between his badass don't be shit cap and his guarantee on results, he ruffles some feathers. And that is what we're all about here. You know, we were talking about this a little bit before, getting on. And one of the big areas that I see there's challenges or the people that bring up is that they struggle to compete with limited resources. Like, okay, I don't have several money bags, or like I don't have the contacts. What are your thoughts?
And look, I think that's when you start, like, let's say you're starting out, or like, and I say starting out, and I mean like anywhere between $0 and a few $1 million in revenue a year, right? Like, to give some perspective, just don't compete. Like, why do you want to be a apple amongst apples? Go be an orange amongst apples. Because the problem with it is when you compete, the only and you look the same as other people, the only difference you have is price point. The challenge with that is at a certain point, you hit a price point that other people can sustain that price point, and you cannot, and you go out of business.
Then it just becomes like a race to the bottom. Like, how cheap can we make it? There's actually an interesting example that I saw recently online, and it was about this brand called Tatcha. And so after 10 years, it was successfully sold for $500 million to Unilever. So they had this big, the skincare industry is massive, right? And they had no money, no innovation, no contacts, etc. So they were like, okay, how do we do this, right? And finally ended up going with the lowest penetration item, which is like blotting paper. So like, for the gents listening, that's to get rid of like oil and everything on the face. Whereas, other skincare brands didn't focus on that because it was such a low commercial potential. But doing that gave them that in because nobody else was focusing on it. So they were getting on the shelves in the supermarkets because like, this is our specialty, etc.
That's a great example because we're really focused in an area that someone else isn't playing with. And I think that, let's say your area of expertise is similar to someone else's, there are ways to position ourselves where you aren't the same. And it could be that, I'm an accountant, but I'm an accountant for this kind of business with these kinds of people. And not only do we do accounting services, but we also cover your bookkeeping. We handle, your payroll, all these other things in the background. And being part of our group also gives you access to these specific business growth events that is all bundled into our offering. And then we go and we're out there talking about it yes, we know numbers are boring and they suck, whoop-de-doo, but we're going to help you and make it fun at the same time.
I see the benefit in that, but it's almost like, you're expanding too much. You're offering so many things that people are like, oh, but what am I coming for? It goes back to that debate, which I feel like is the very base of doing business is do you offer many things, or do you just focus on that one specific, this is what we offer?
So I guess I probably should have clarified that a little bit more, because all the things that I was talking about is just it's still one solution, but we're just layering down the solution. So we're solving the solution at a higher level. Or we're the solution we are layering down on solves the problem at a higher level. And that's where we differentiate from the way that we solve the problem is very different to how other people solve the problem. Now, what I just said, potentially someone else could do. So it's about showing why us, who are we about, what do we believe in, how do we support those people specifically, how do we people buy based from trust. It's like I know everyone's like know, like, and trust, right? If somebody likes you, they're not necessarily going to buy from you. If like your best friend comes to you and goes, "Hey, I want to start this business, right? And we're going to do this thing," and you know or don't know whether they have any concept of business or whatever or something like that, you're not just going to be like, "Right, let's go do it." There has to be a certain amount of established trust there that they have an understanding of what they're going to do and how that works before you'll actually buy into that. So it becomes about how are we portraying ourselves and establishing ourselves as an expert within that industry in a different way from someone else to be able to establish that trust so that we can position ourselves as the only option for them to solve that problem.
You know, I see that a lot, right? Like there's that, okay, that balance of, you know, we need to establish authority in the subject matter, right? But at the same time, I've seen people buy simply because like, oh, you know, we like your laugh or your hair or so, like just some random thing that makes them feel super connected.
That is still a trust thing because that laugh might remind them of their aunt who like completely changed their life, or you know, the smile, the way you show up, the way that you talk goes, "Hey, I talk like that. People that talk like that are my kind of people. I trust you." Like that is what that is about. It's not liking, it's like inherent beliefs that they have built that you've been able to connect with by showing up and being who you are.
Diving into that, I think it's beyond going into like, okay, just be you, which a lot of people like,
Yeah, like
they say it, right? Like it's being consistent with that.
you know that I'm like the let's show up and be unapologetically you guy. Like that's what I tell my people. That's what I talk to clients about. That's what I want to encourage people to do. And it's not about it just being a cop out and going, "Oh, just be you. It'll be okay." Like firstly, if you show up and you be you, then there's like humans are the best lie detectors in the world, right? Like they just know if something's a bit off. They can feel it. They're not comfortable. They go, "What is going on here?" And then the second part is you then, like, if you're just being you, it's so much easier for you to go and do the thing. Once we combine that together, you have amazing things where, like, I've got a client right now that's showing up and she had some very big problems with getting money from the banks to go and work on her business and invest in, like, purchasing properties so they can renovate them and they can go do the thing. So her slogan now is "fuck the banks." And then what she is showing people is how to go and get money from investors and source the properties and go take the steps to renovate properties and sell them without actually having upfront money. And like that is part of her story. And then she's sharing the story and she's showing other people. And one of the like, so to elaborate on that, not only is she doing it for herself in that space, she's then showing other people how to do it. And the difference between her and other people in that market right now is she is actually actively doing the thing as her business. And then so when she's showing other people how to do that, this is exactly what is working real time for them in their business to actually convert and make it happen. And they're making real time adjustments on it. And then it's not some pretty picture perfect course or anything like that. It's real actionable steps that are happening. And she's then putting it in front of all the people that are like her from 5 or 10 years ago. So she can show the journey that she has gone on and she is still on. So she can then show them the path forward.
I see that a lot. You know, so many companies the ones that are successful, they focus in on that personal journey that got them into that. It's not like, hey, like we just felt like starting up a picture frame business, right? Like there was something that was like that happened that made them feel like, you know what? Like this could be a better world with better picture frames.
There's a couple of ways that I have found that, and like this is talked about a lot, so I'm not going to say that I've created this or anything. Like it's just from experience and working with clients, this is what we found, is that either working with yourself from like 5 to 10 years ago, that person, it is a lot easier because the stories that you can share are about you. And then all of the clients that you are helping have then been along the same journey as you. So you just have this line of just story upon story upon story upon story of all these people that have been through exactly the same thing, including you, which is super powerful when you just stack results upon results upon results, because it becomes irrefutable that you can do the thing and that you are helping other people do the thing. The other version of that is like, if you have, even if you haven't done that particular thing, whatever we're talking about, yet you have, through whether it's corporate or like through another business, you have helped a lot of people have that transition and work on their business, and then you transition into doing that for yourself and continue to help people, then you're just talking about their results and the stories based around that. So there's kind of like two ways that I've seen that works really well. But the first one, for personal connection, is massive.
That really reminds me of Mary Kay. I don't know if you remember. I mean, it was a thing, like what I remember growing up in Australia, and I know that it's still a thing in the US, I believe. And it's very much because of that human element, that growth, because like you're getting to know the person that's in front of you, their story, and how like it's changed them. But like, the founder has their own story, which is similar to that. And that's how it's grown from a tiny company. They got known because of, the women that came, like they came to the door and they were saying like, this like how this has changed me. This is how like my influence, and like they all have different stories of like, how that makeup has played a role, maybe with their kids having their first like makeup session or something like that, right? And even within the company, they've, what I heard in the US, I never saw this in Australia, is like when you get to a certain level of like sales, you get like a pink Cadillac, and that becomes like a part of the brand essence. Like I've been working so long, like, and just to get like, this pink Cadillac that I can show off, it's like branding, hello, like, oh my God, a pink Cadillac. And B, like, that motivation within the team, like,
Yeah, well, because then people just like that know what it is will be like, oh, pink Cadillac, that person is like has done that, right? That's very cool.
There's always that one thing when you find it, and it's always somewhere hidden within the brand, existing as it is. Like even if you've been operating for, be it 2 years, be it like 30 years, etc., there's always that one thing that's like the way you do things is going to be different. It's going to have that different take, and it's finding that's specific to the business so that it's reframed. You're not even competing in the same marketplace or the same with the same competition, right? Like you're still gonna have competition, but they're focused in a different area.
It's not even about the competition in my mind. It is about how are we positioning ourselves so that when our prospects look at us, we are the only choice for them to solve their problem with the solution that we have to give them the outcome that they want. And that comes from telling a story. That comes from taking them on the customer journey. That comes from positioning and what are like when they see us and they associate with us, what are the feelings that they are left with, and what are they talking to people about when we aren't there? That's branding.
Yeah, I mean, even focusing on specifically, maybe there's certain offerings that other people aren't really focused. Like, the example earlier, like the blotting paper, right? Other brands aren't necessarily focused on that side of things, where you could make that into like, we do this better than anyone else. Like, I know Stanley Cups, like they were almost going to die out, right? The brand was like dead in the water. And then having that reframe in people's minds of like, wait, this doesn't necessarily need to apply to a certain market. Like, so then next thing you know, you see like Instagram, TikTok full of like ladies with different kinds of like Stanley Cups just sipping on them, or like a collection of Stanley Cups.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, look, and that's a good point. The thing that was kind of going through my head as you're talking is, and like I think about my business, and one of the things that we've done that has made a huge, huge difference is really just double downing on accountability and just going through and going, okay, when we talk, it's okay. Someone signs up and we're like, all right, there's two things. The first one is, when you work with us, if you aren't getting what you need from us, let's have a conversation. And then if we can't rectify that, fire us as a coaching consultant. So that's us doubling down on our accountability to ensure that we're doing the right thing by the client. On the flip side is, as a client, if you aren't doing the work that we've agreed upon, because we don't force anyone to do anything, we have agreed upon actions, and you don't show up for the sessions, we're going to have a conversation. And if you don't rectify that, you get fired as a client. And then we double down on the accountability that we have for clients showing up. That is like, I have not met or seen anyone in our industry that is that tough with accountability. And what it does is it gets clients results because they show up and they do the work and they don't. And like I've had like 8 coaching sessions today. It's been a very big day, and everyone has shown up and they have done the work. And they're like, oh yeah, we did this and we got this, and we've had some really like, I've got some brand new people that are on. So 2 of them are like new newbies, like weeks in, and one of them had like did one step that got them 18K in like basically the first step that they've done as a coaching client, which is kick ass, absolutely awesome. And they're like, no, I was determined to go and do that work because of the conversation. And then the second one is like, and they went over, but they just doing this massive work on who is their ideal client and their positioning right now, because there was a few tweaks that we had to do to start with. And like they rocked up and shared screen, and there's just like all this stuff, and they have gone into massive depth. And they're like, oh, this is so good because I realized that I need to have a look at this and I need to do this. And, they've gone and revisited pricing and everything because of it as well, and put all their prices up. So that just, it breeds results. And I think in the industry, it is a point of difference because there is like there's a lot of coaches and consultants out there. It's like in Australia, there's hundreds of thousands of them, and we only have 21 million people. Like, so it's a lot. And, for most of them that are out there, they're scrambling for clients. So like, it's scary to do that.
One of your big ones, at least like that I've seen, on LinkedIn, etc., is like having that guarantee, where like a lot of other coaches, consultants, etc., like they'll be weary of like that guarantee.
So we actually couldn't do that guarantee without the accountability, because it's a conditional guarantee, and it's conditional on you doing the work. So it's actually like, but if you do the work, and that's the reward for being accountable and showing up and doing all the things, is that we then guarantee if you work with us for a 12-month period, you will get 10x the ROI on what you've spent with us. Now, for most people, it's actually more than that right now. But I had to lift it because it was $100,000 initially, And then we kept flying past that. So I'm like, okay, well, that's not very, like, for us, it's a bit of a cop out. So that's why it's now 10x as opposed to 100K.
To me, and having worked with you as well, like I know that that's very much a thing. Like, and it's being able to have that one thing, right? Or even multiple things where you're just like, yeah, we this is our approach that's different, or we're willing to do this that's different, or our voice that's different. Like all these things put together, even like, the cat that you have, exactly. That's putting all those individual things together. When they align, that's what makes that difference. That's what makes that, like, your position slightly different from them.
Yeah, because like no one else has this. No one else has the accountability layer. No one else, like, actually, to be fair, there are other people out there that are delivering really great results, but I don't see very many of them, right? And they're not serving the same kind of people that I am, and they're not they're not doing the same things that I'm doing. So, and most of those people that I come across that are delivering results like that, we actually have really good conversations, and we're like sending people that aren't right fit for us to the other person.
I can't remember the name of this ice cream brand, but they started off originally like in the ice cream category, right? Like, and the ice cream category is like massive. And then there's like a lot of very well established brands. Like, okay, we go into more and like, okay, we want this. Like you're automatically have that name in your mind rather than like the flavor. And for them, coming into that market fresh without that established, name or anything, they had to like rethink it. It's like, hey, we're losing money. We're not getting the sales that we thought. And that's, a lot of businesses go into it like that. Like, let's try this. We're different, but actually it's not really. So finally they repositioned themselves as a health food, like, a gym supplement ice cream, which was like just a completely new category. Like you see gym supplement, like, the powders, the bars, etc. But like,
I want gym supplement ice cream. That sounds amazing.
Right? So that's what I mean. Like, how fucking amazing is that? Just, it's still the same product. Like, you have to obviously look at the ingredients and adjust that to make sure that like it balances out to what you're trying to sell. But it's a completely different category you're competing against. Or like you're not even competing against anyone that I'm aware of in terms of ice cream as a gym supplement.
Yeah, it's just about positioning, right? Like, and that's, I think that too many people, when they like, at least what I've experienced and I see is too many people come in and they go, yeah, I can do that thing. And so they just go and copy paste what someone else is doing. And then they go and copy paste the pricing. And then they go and like try and copy all the steps that someone else is doing, and like everything from the way that they market their business to their email cycles and their social media and all that stuff. The problem with doing that is that you are like the tail end of the dog. You don't know where it's going. You don't know anything that's happening, and you're just following along for the ride. And the problem is you don't actually get to see any of the testing of what works, what doesn't work. You don't get your own customer base. You're not building loyalty at all, because you're just copying everything, and you're effectively, to a degree, trying to trade in on what someone else has already done. You kind of end up being like the poor cousin.
That leads into that agileness, like having a sense of agileness in terms of a brand. Like if you're right at the back and following what everybody else is doing, they're already, being agile because they're in that practice of like leading in the industry. Whereas you're like just following them. So by the time like they've adapted to whatever technology or whatever new thing that there may be, like, AI or, changing tastes, etc., you're behind. So like, to me, that's what I see played like a big part in, like, the failure of brands like Kodak or Blockbuster, that sort of thing. Like
They just can't move. They can't move fast enough anymore. There's too many layers of decision makers in there. So unless you've got someone who's really very present in the business that can push things through, and you've got a very active board, or you've got a very active leadership structure in there that can move fast. Even then, you got to think about it, moving fast with hundreds to thousands of employees is not your version of fast is very different from someone who has a business that has 20 employees, because you can literally grab all 20 of those employees in a room at one time and go, right, this is what we're doing, this is what it looks like, this is what we need to do, and we need to get it rolling in the next couple of weeks. And it'll be a hard slog, but it is achievable. It's rough when you got to do that, but it's achievable comparative to if you try and do that with hundreds or thousands of employees. It's uncomfortable to even consider, to say the least. And there's always going to be someone that isn't there. There's always going to be people that don't understand why you're doing the thing, or they don't like change, so they don't want to do it, or all of these things that break the chain and mean that you have to keep revisiting it to move, and it slows you down. So when, as a smaller business, when you are in that, let's call it from 1 to 2 employees all the way up to 50 employees, maybe to 100, but 50, let's say call it 50, you can move so much faster. And then if you're just out there copying and pasting what other people are doing, you actually give away your biggest advantage of speed and being able to pivot. And I would highly encourage someone to not pivot all the time, because then you don't get momentum. But the ability to being able to pivot, you don't want to give that up.
I mean, I do see a lot of virtue in terms of mini pivots, you micro pivots. You barely notice it, and it's just okay, based on what the changes are, etc. But just even that idea of the bigger companies, and what I've heard about, say for example, Disney, it's so well established and there's so many layers that say for example, if you want to put Mickey Mouse ears on a certain brand, it's going to take weeks of different kinds of approvals, different kinds of thoughts, etc.
I've literally been responsible for 273 people. You go and try changing a policy, and then having to get everyone to have read that they and understand the policy, and then sign that they understand the policy, and then implement it. It is not an easy thing to do, and it takes way longer than you think that it would. And then also, you've got to break people's habits, because some of those things may have been in place for years. So you've then got to police that, but it felt that way at the time, or to go back and ensure that people are actually doing the thing. So it's not even just about changing it; it's also ensuring that continues on, and we change people's habits that have potentially formed over 2, 3, 5, 10 plus years.
Any tips in terms of if you have such a big team and you want to make sure that everybody's, say for example, on board with a new idea, or they're all familiar, or they understand the reason why, which is
it starts at the top down. You've got to you've got to lead it from the top, and then each layer you have to communicate to the best of your ability, and still the why. Ideally, if you want to do it successfully, you want to have really strong values set up in the business, because at that point, the bottom layer of people is generally about 5 or 6 layers deep. So you have to get through those other 4 to 5 layers of people to communicate that message through, because you can't do it all yourself. So it becomes about values. Really, it becomes about value-driven leadership, as opposed to just telling people what to do. Because you've got to instill the why, and this let's like align it with the values to get people to go, okay, this is really important, so that they can then communicate it down to the next layer.
So making sure that they're really familiar with the values.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's, in my experience, that's the easiest way to do it. I mean, there's other ways to do it, but that's what. And like, if you're doing it with a smaller team, it's still the same thing. Like, it's, just telling someone what to do, especially now more than ever, and it was always important, but more people care about the why than you think. So it's really important. Like, no one just wants to be told, hey, go do this. And they're like, hang on, that creates more work for me. And I have no idea why you want me to do that. Nobody wants that. It doesn't make sense to them. So if that's something that needs to happen, you've got to align it with, why are we actually doing this thing? How does it tie into our values? How is it better for you? What is in it for you? And what is in it for our clients?
And I see that as well, like in terms of the different generations. It's like, say, for example, Gen X, Gen Alpha, like these kind of elements, the why, the reason behind are more of a driver than other things. Like what is that real commitment? Like, is it just all like showing face, or is there something deeper than that?
When we go and look at the workforce for a very long time has been hammered with, we pay you, so just put up with it and go do this thing. And everyone's pushed back on that, and I think rightly so, because even over the past couple of decades, like the best people that I ever worked with or worked for, even though they were in those environments, were always taking people along for the journey, even as a product of the like some very interesting environments. They still, even though they exhibited some of the behaviors, they were still taking people along for the journey, and that's why they were good at what they did.
I see that like a lot. There's brands that have really messed up big time on that, like where you can see that even the values, the why, like what they're standing for, what they're representing for, just failed because take Bud Light and that one advertisement that they did, like, or the one partnership that they did, and it was just because if that person had have thought, the marketing manager even had have thought, like, okay, what do we represent? What do we line up for? Like that option of partnership wouldn't have even come into play.
It's a very common mistake that a lot of businesses make, and I think that probably small businesses make it a lot more than a bigger corporate entity, because bigger corporate entities are a little bit more stringent because they have to be. I'm not going to say that they're perfect, but I think that in the small business space we make the mistake more, is that we get very focused on ourselves, and we get very focused on what things mean for us and what it means for our business and everything like that, when, especially in instances like that, is, who are we here to serve? Like, what are we trying to get done? And it's really about our clients and what their beliefs are. And we were talking about trust earlier. It's like, how are we building trust with them? Well, we're exhibiting things that they associate with their beliefs. And if you go and, like, a break of trust is to straight out say something or do something that contradicts their beliefs.
Got to make sure that we stay like on point in terms of values and why. Thank you so much for coming on, Michael. You can connect with Michael through the deeds in the podcast show notes. And thanks for listening to the Art of Branding podcast. A great way to support more people to create their own badass brand is dropping a 5-star review. And when you're ready to shift your business from just another to the obvious one, visit Badassery by B to get started and let the badassery flow.
Time for bloopers. Yay!
You know what I mean? Like, say, for example, if they want to do an
I got a super lecture on colors in brand today. I was just like, I don't need another brand lecture today.
So you came onto a brand podcast. It fits. Like, to me, it makes sense, at least. You put them together, and it makes a part, like, the whole brand.